Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Field Engineer channel. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for your continued interest in this channel and our talks. Please subscribe to follow our latest content and hit the like button if you enjoyed this discussion. Today, it's going to be a roundtable with 5 people. You know already my colleague Charlie, who is already very active on this channel and did previous interviews. Welcome, Charlie. We have with us 3 other managers, Bruce Breeden, Jerry Varvaro, and Maurizio de Poli. Welcome, gentlemen. We're happy to have you here today. And we were saying earlier, amongst the 5 of us, we counted around 200 years of management experience. So the topic today will be about management and about leadership. And each one of us had their own experience. We are happy to share it with you today, and we hope that our field engineers will benefit from this the same as other managers in the community. So let's get started with the recent concept that we hear a lot about everywhere in the world, everywhere in different industries, where we hear about servant leadership. So we're going to go around and try to see how we see servant leadership, what it is about, how we understand it, and how we are maybe applying it in our own environments. So I'm going to start by maybe focusing a little bit on the term servant and what it means to some people, and maybe if it can be sometimes misinterpreted. Jerry, maybe we can start with you. What's your understanding of servant leadership? Maybe how you have been applying it also.
Well, I think by nature, if you're a good leader, you've been practicing this concept your whole career. Somebody put a label on it, calling it servant leadership, creating, say, a buzzword, but really it is the service of your team as a manager. And it's being empathetic to the people on your team and putting their needs above your own. Because from my perspective, I'm sitting here in a nice, comfortable office, but I have 200 people flying around 2 continents and crawling under machines, and that is what's most on my mind, and that's what drives me in my leadership approach. So I think it's finally nice to see that they've kind of quantified it, as far as, and I think it's a key to successful management, especially in service. Yeah.
Excellent. Maurizio, you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very young, compared to you guys in your experience. But I still see, or I've seen, at least in these 20 years, that the way you support as a manager or as a coordinator, a team has changed a lot. And it also depends on the culture, on the country you come from. So I come from a country where there were, no work at all. So you would stick to one job for whole your life, and you just follow what the manager says, no matter what. You just stick to the duty, do it, complete it, come back, and go to the next one. And what I've seen is this, as Jerry said, this empathy, which is needed nowadays. So every time you deal with the team, you are, even as a manager, you still have the duty of, lose conflict, be in between, coordinate, support, monitor. And this is what is for me the word servant. It means not commanding, but being able to have like a flow in the team, to have some sort of correct way of doing happiness and complete your duties every day in a nice way, in order to have your team always cheered up and ready to do the next step, the next visit.
Excellent. Bruce.
Yes, I mean, well said there. And maybe servant is a little misleading, and maybe we get hung up on that particular word. I think Jerry said it, I mean, it's what we do. I mean, having empathy for people in the field and, the busyness of their schedule and their stresses and challenges and things like that. So I think if you think about it, we mostly came up through the ranks as field engineers ourselves, right? So we have that empathy because we know that job. We were also trained in supporting the customers. What first to have empathy for their problem, right? So I think we've been along those lines before Servant, so to speak, was created. But I'm happy for it too because it draws more attention, not just in our industry or profession, but in all leadership. So there's a saying too that I'm sure the audience has heard, but it goes as for field engineering anyway. You take care of the engineer takes care of the customer then takes care of the company, right? So we've all been used to that, and to me, that's what we do, right? Support people with tools, training, situations, that kind of thing. So I'm glad for it too.
Right. Thank you, Bruce. Charlie.
So I mean, I followed four or five great voices already. So I think we've caught the word of empathy. I think that's really important. I'm going to say another key factor that we've pulled out is the enabling and support of our teams, right? We're not just saying, go away, do a task. We can do that with empathy, of course, but I think we need to make sure we are serving our people by giving them the tools, giving them the support they need to deliver for our customers, right? So I think that's another really important concept. I think everyone can relate to where they've had a good manager who's cared about them, who wants them to succeed, and a less good manager where you're told, go off and do this thing. I don't want to hear about the problems you're having, just get it done. And I think everyone can relate to those. And I think we innately know what the better manager for us individually is. And of course, the other thing is, you can't manage people all the same. Other people are motivated by different things. So I think being that servant, you can't just be one servant and one type of person. You have to adapt to whatever your team needs are. I think there's a lot to unpack in that.
True. And I think some key words that we heard is empathy, support, and as you said, Jerry, at the beginning, managers could be sitting in a comfortable office, but we have walked in the shoes of the field engineer, and we've had managers, right, when we were field engineers, and we know how it is in the field and where we need the presence of the manager to support, to feel with us and understand our world, our reality, and be able to make the difference for us day to day. Whether they reach out to us as field engineers to say, hey, I know you have a big day today, do you need anything? Or, hey, don't hesitate to contact me. Be present as a manager for your people, because you never know when they will need you and they will reach out to you. So also from my experience as a field engineer, I've had managers whom I can describe as, servant leaders, but I've had managers also who are far on the spectrum from being servant leaders, right? So if I were to talk about an example, I've had a manager who was completely absent from my life as a field engineer. In a way, having had the proper training, having the tools, and being able to manage my sphere of responsibility for my customers, I was fine. But whenever I reached out to that manager, he was not present for me, or he was not supportive. So I'm giving that example maybe to illustrate a little bit what could be the opposite of a servant leader. I don't know what experiences you had in your past as field engineers. So maybe you've had similar stories or something different that maybe we can talk about, and how it could have been now as managers, how we avoid those situations. Jerry, any similar stories?
Yeah, I can remember being on site at 2 a.m. in a data center, and if I didn't get the server up, 200 people couldn't take orders the next day. And that was the definition of being on your own. And at that point, it's how much preparation and support you were given to develop, to have the skills to solve those problems. And let's face it, nobody wants an unhappy field engineer walking on site. If they're not happy in their professional life, then that translates to the customer. The key is, depends on where the service organization fits in the grand scheme. Here we're a part of a bigger company. We are not only a service company, we're a products company. And leadership is critical. Do you have people that understand the business model of service? That's the first step, right? So you can better make decisions that support the service business and the people in that business, right? So that's critical. And as the business develops, you can easily lose the grasp of the servant leadership concept, right? Where you're maybe not focused so much on the team dynamic and needs. You're looking more at the corporate level requirements of the position, right? So you're torn between the two, depending on where you are in your management journey, right? So you can never forget the foundation on which your success is based, right? Even though you have other things pulling you in different directions. So, but yeah, I mean, it goes back to, like you said, is it the Machiavellian leadership style? Like, is it better to be feared or loved? Or is it better to be understood? And I'll take understood anytime, because it just takes away so much of the stress,
So true. Maurizio?
Oh, yeah. So the funny stories, just, going back to what you said, Jerome, I had two things that just popped up in my mind was food processing. And I remember there were like a production line, and people would get paid by the amount of cheese or I don't know, whatever would be cut. So the amount they would produce in a day. So as long as you don't fix the instrument, they don't get any money. So I remember having like 20 people behind me waiting just for the, for the production line to be running up and running again, because then they would, produce overnight and get paid. So, and this is where you kind of are under pressure as a service engineer, and you might, nowadays you have, mobile phones. That time we didn't have any mobile phone, but you would ring up your manager and say, hey, I mean, I don't know, talk to these guys responsible and, calm them and make them understand I'm working, I will take care of it. And this is where we have really to step into every day and make sure we support the people in the field, because field service, it's a tough job. It's a nice, rewarding job. Sometimes can be tough, and that's where we have the chance nowadays to really connect with the service engineers in the field and support them. And when they struggle, when they want to change schedule, when they have private topics also to talk about, you are there for them. And yeah, that's one thing. The other scene that really comes to my mind was my very first day for another company, where I just got the electrical plan, the car key, and it said, this is the instrument, it's not working, it's like 200 kilometers away, just go try to fix it. No training, no nothing. So one thing that comes to my mind is also the onboarding plan. So when you have a new service engineer that comes to your company, not throwing this person right away in the cold water, but try to have a time for this person to involve with the product, involve with the processes, with the people. I think this is also very important. And this is where we as manager can make our best to have this person, have a smooth onboarding at the very beginning.
Very important topic. I'm sure we'll get back to it next round, maybe. Bruce.
I think we need to go back to the cheese. It's either fix the cheese or be the cheese kind of scenario that we've all faced one way or the other. That's a good one, with all the people looking at you that are depending on getting paid. To touch on a point Jerry made, it's also about the culture. I remember being in a leadership meeting, and the CEO of this particular company, a multi-billion-dollar company, had a quote, and basically he said, either you're directly taking care of the customer for our company, or you should be taking care of those who are taking care of the customer. And it just created this alignment that we're all in this together. So back to the leadership, I've actually been very fortunate to have had very good leaders in my service organizations. But we all know the scenario, someone never goes to the field, never, they can't be contacted when you need them, scenarios like that. But I would say in my experience, that was very few times. But to me, another example of good leadership versus bad leadership is the preparation that Maurizio was talking about. Never should someone be put into a situation like that with their onboarding or even later, right? Or if they do, right, you may be the closest human that could go to a site because there was no other option, but you're going to have people on the line with you, aiding you. We all have that game plan. So I think preparation, which is good planning, good tools and training, good support, is really what a great leader does behind the scenes to avoid someone getting into a situation like Maurizio explained on his day one of the job.
Right. Charlie?
Yeah, I'm reflecting on my days as a field service engineer, and initially I was working in Europe, and it was a smallish US company, and my boss was on the East Coast, so it was a 5-hour time difference. So invariably, I would have to wait 5 hours if I had a problem and I needed support. So my training was brilliant because I needed to be independent, and I was. So I think I had really good experiences early on in my career in terms of the support and in terms of the leadership. So good role models, but equally, progressing through my career, I've seen bad examples where I feel my experience has not been listened to, and those bosses don't last long because they move or I move. So I think it's really important for a business and for continuity and for taking care of your customers. You do experience that leadership, and where you experience bad leadership, there's got to be some way of calling it out and some way of feeding back and hopefully to improve it, or hopefully to change it in one way or another. So I think it's one of those areas where actually being able to give honest and open feedback, again, as leaders, we have to be open to that. If we're doing something wrong, establishing that relationship with our people so they can say, what, I think you've got that wrong, I think is really important. Because if you don't have that, you're never going to develop, and you're never going to improve the issues that your people, your staff are coming across.
Right. And as you all said, there's a common theme, which is onboarding and how a new field engineer is brought on board. Sometimes you hire field engineers who have been in the field for many years, but they are not trained on your products. They are not trained on the standard procedures of the company. They are not trained on the workflow of that organization. So it's really critical that the company takes the time to onboard the new employee properly, fully, from the HR perspective, from the technical training perspective, and everything that revolves around the daily work of the field engineer.